Hey, it's Anthony Iannarino, thesalesblog.com, right here, youtube.com/Iannarino, and author of The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need. And this is my second YouTube show called Q&AI. It's a question and answer show where you send me your questions, I answer them, and for the first time here on the show is Don the Idea Guy Snyder, who will be reading us your questions. Don, give us the first question.
David sent in the following question. Asking existing clients to refer my business to their network is the most effective way for me to grow, but this requires the client to work for free on my behalf. While some are more receptive than others, is there any advice or feedback you can offer to help motivate a contact to become an ambassador?
Doesn't Don have the exact right voice for this kind of thing? It's perfect. All right, David, I know what company you work for, and I saw the question when it came in. And here's the thing about referrals. What you want to do is you want to set up that relationship from the very beginning. So as soon as you do your first deal, what you want to say is, listen, David, if I create the kind of value that we talked about, can I come back to you and ask you for a referral? My business generally works when people like you understand the high value, high trust, high caring approach that we have, and you make an introduction to a friend. And I want to tell you, I won't ask you for that until I believe that I've earned it, number one. And number two, I'm not going to hard close anybody. I just want you to know if you make the introduction, I'll introduce myself, and they ever need me, then they'll know who I am and we can go from there. I want to do that in the very first meeting because I want to let them know that I believe it's my job to earn the right to ask for that referral. And if I do earn it, then I'm going to come back and ask for it, and then that's okay. What I also did was said, listen, I'm not going to hassle your friends or your family members. I'm going to introduce myself. If there's something there, I want them to know me, but I'm not going to hassle them and I'm not going to make you look bad. What you have to do between that point in time and the time that you actually ask for that referral is earn the right to deserve it. And that means you have to be high trust, high value, high caring. You've got to follow up. You've got to make all the deposits in that relationship that give you the right to ask for the withdrawal and say, now I'm asking you to do something for me. And when you do this, you want to ask directly. You want to say, can you send an email and copy me on it and let them know that I'm going to be calling them? Or can you make an introduction by calling them and connecting me with them so that they know I'm calling? But you want to ask them for exactly how you want that referral to happen. You don't want to say, could you recommend me to some friends? And the other thing that you don't want to do is say, give me a list of people that I can call. What happens when you do that? People are like, wait, hang on a second. I don't know what you're going to say to them. If you hard sell them, it's going to make me look bad. If you make me look bad, then I've taken a deposit or a withdrawal out of my relationships, and I don't want to do that. So you have to be careful, but earn the right to do it and set it up from the very beginning. We underestimate and underutilize referrals, and it's a great way to grow your business. Thanks so much for the question. Don, give us question number 2.
Carmi asks, in your book, The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need, I don't think you covered what should be included in creating your initial call pitch to a client. Most likely you get the receptionist first with the gate closed, and I could use some examples of what to say in that first and second call as I work toward getting past the gatekeeper to my target client. I have business prospects spread across an entire county, and it's not always possible to physically visit them all, so I am reliant on the phone and digital media. Also, what is the etiquette for texting a prospect when you have their mobile number?
Okay, 2 questions here from Carmi. The first question is, what do I do about gatekeepers? And I'll tell you the first thing, I would try to engage that person before I would try to bowl them over. So I'd want to say something like, Carmi, listen, I know that you work for Don, and I know Don is super busy, and I want to make sure that if I ever get a meeting with Don, I can create value. What's he concerned about right now? Or what would he want from somebody like me? And I want to push on that because I want them to say, look, okay, I'm engaging you. What they're concerned about right now is this, and they don't have time to meet with salespeople. Then I get to say something like, listen, I know that you work very closely with Don, and I have this idea. Can I run it past you and you can vet it and see if you think it's worth his time? And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to try to make a friend, and I want to try to make the gatekeeper know I'm not trying to roll past you. I understand you're doing your job, and the value that you create is protecting that stakeholder from me. That's what you think your job is. You're supposed to keep out salespeople who create no value. Okay, that's the first approach that I'm going to take. After that, I'm probably going to get increasingly a little bit more assertive and say, listen, I have an idea, and I'm afraid if I don't share this idea with the person that you report to, they're going to miss an opportunity. And I really need 15 minutes of their time. You tell me when I can be there, and I'll be there. And I appreciate your help with this. I'm going to push a little bit harder. Each time I'm going to ratchet that up a little bit more. And I'm going to get super tactical here and tell you, if this doesn't work for you, you're going to have to try to find another way. You're going to have to call early in the morning. You're going to have to send an email directly to that person. You're going to have to connect with them on LinkedIn. You're going to have to call after hours. You're going to have to find somebody else who can make an introduction, or you're going to have to find another way into the company. So what you want to do, if you can't reach that stakeholder, start in a completely different area of the company. What your job is to get in. So don't focus so much on, I need the decision maker. I need somebody who can give me access to that decision maker if that person is difficult to reach. Start somewhere else. Start lower and work your way up. Or start horizontally. Start in a different department and ask to move in. What you want most of all is just to get a way in. And once you're in, you can find your way through. So if you can't get past the gatekeeper, which you probably can if you engage them, then find another way in and find a way to reach that individual, but don't give up no matter what. I've had gatekeepers keep me out for months, and eventually I wore them down by continuing to call and continuing to try to share some message of value. And it's not easy to do, and I won't pretend it is, but it's our job. It's what we have to do. The second question that you asked to me is super interesting, is what's the etiquette for texting? Here's my strong idea right now about this. I have a very, very strong commitment to texting. That phone is in someone's hand almost 24 hours a day, or it's right next to their head while they're asleep. You know they're going to get the text message, and more executives like to use text messaging because you ask a question, they give you an answer. It's a very fast form of communication that's limited by 160 characters. That's really, really useful for executives. I think of it, it's the same as a phone call, it's the same as an email. Go ahead and start using text. I've been using it with clients for years. In fact, I asked a client who prefers text, why do you prefer text? And he said, I haven't really thought about it. And I said, how did you learn that you liked text? He said, I never really thought about it. And I said, let me ask you a question. You have teenage children, don't you? And he said, yeah, I have 2 teenage children, and you're right. That's where I learned how to text. Executives learn how to text by texting with their children and their family members, but they strongly prefer it. In every case, I've had a much faster return on a text than an email or a voicemail. So I think you can go ahead and start using that now. Thanks so much for your question, Carmi. Don?
Lenny asked the following question about people within the same company playing off each other. I sell a technical solution to the engineer, who then passes it to the buyer, who says it's not for them to decide, and then they pass it back to the engineer, so no one ever ends up making a decision. How do I overcome this challenge?
Okay, what happens when you're trying to build consensus is you'll find out that there's a lot of people who can say no to a deal, but not one person who can say yes by themselves. So the engineer passes it off to the business owner passes it back to the engineer, and it's because they don't know how to buy internally. Your job as a professional salesperson now is to understand the process that the client needs to go through in order to make a good decision. So you're going to start by controlling that process. And when you meet with the engineer, you're going to say, listen, normally the business owner is going to want to have something to say about this. When can we all get together so we can talk this through and make sure everybody gets what they want here? And when the business owner comes in to say, listen, you guys are going to have an internal discussion, or we can have it now, but ultimately, what's your process for making this decision going to look like, and how can I help facilitate that for you? They've never had this conversation internally. And most deals are dying right now, not because what you have is not a good solution, not because your client doesn't need it, but because they have a very tough time siloed inside their own organization, getting together to make decisions. Your job is to teach them how to buy what they need. And the person who can control that process and let them know, look, we're all going to have to get into a room together and make this decision, or you're going to have to say yes so that this person can say yes, and help them figure that out. That's your role now. It didn't used to be that way. There used to be a decision maker, and you would go to that decision maker and they would decide. There's still somebody who has to sign. We still need to know who's going to sign the deal, but more than that, we need to figure out who needs to be in that deal. A couple years ago, I sat in a meeting and there were 14 stakeholders all the way around the room, and I was sitting in the front of the room by myself. And after about a half hour of questions, I looked around and I realized No one in this room can say yes by themselves, but they can all say no. So if anybody didn't like what I was saying, they could shut it down, but they couldn't approve it. And I just watched and I figured that the three people who were asking questions and being asked questions themselves ended up being the center of gravity. And I pursued meetings with them, met with two of them, was able to win the deal that way. That's the world that we live in now. It's about consensus. Read the Challenger Customer, read the Challenger Sale, read my new book when it comes out, The Lost Art of Closing, and it'll help you understand how to do that. But the main thing I would tell you, control the process, sell them the process. If you sell them the process and they agree to go down this path with you, you'll get to yes much, much faster. And I'll tell you, it's our fault. It's that we're not controlling the process that we end up like this. Thanks so much for your question. Last question, Don.
And finally, Rodney asks, Anthony, have you read all those books I see on the shelves in the background of your videos?
No, I have not read all of these books, nor have I read the 1,000 additional books that I have, more than 1,000 on the Kindle. I read a lot, and I read a lot of half books, and I read 50 pages of some books because I got the gist of the idea, and I found what I needed, so I was able to set it down. I've read about 40% of the books that I have, but I subscribe to an idea that I picked up from Nicholas Nassim Taleb, who got it from Umberto Eco, the author, of having an anti-library. So I have this, which is an anti-library, which means these are the books that I've bought that I haven't read yet. And anytime I decide I want to explore some idea or I want to go deeper, I can turn around and I can grab something off of the shelf and I can read it, or I can pick up the Kindle and I can read what I want. I started building this library on this side of the room. There's hundreds of leather-bound books I bought from Easton Press because in 1995, when I started buying books, there was no good e-reader, and I thought I'll build this library for my children so they have these books, not knowing that we were going to get rid of books and everything's going to be done electronically. But I still like a physical book, and I still like reading on a Kindle the same as a physical book because I can take notes, I can highlight things and go out to my Amazon page and get it. I've not read all of them. I don't know that I'll ever read all of the books that I own, but I'm always willing to spend money on my personal and professional development. So anything that I want to study, I'll buy a book or I'll buy multiple books. And as a parent, I've always purchased any book that any child of mine wants. If they want a book, I'll buy the book for them. If they read half of it, that's great. If they read all of it, that's great. If they just set the books on a stack and they pick it up later on, that's fine with me. I don't really care. But I think books are the greatest investment you can make. For $25 and 6 hours of your time, you can get what somebody else spent 20,000 hours learning and a couple thousand hours writing and crafting into a book. So there's no better deal. This is Q&AI. This was episode 1. Now I want your questions. Email me at anthony@iannarino.com and then go ahead in the subject line, put Q&AI, so you can send me your questions and we'll read them online, unless you're brave enough to talk into a video camera like this. If you want to do it on video, we'll go ahead and use your video in that episode, and you can give us your Twitter handle, you can give us the company that you work for, we'll put it all out there. I'm Anthony Iannarino. Thanks so much for being here. Hit the subscribe button. This is Q&AI.